All right, welcome to episode number 6 of The Three Amigos. The Three Amigos is a podcast of three friends that not both, there's three of them. All three love two things except each other, craft beer and heavy metal.
Depends how much we drink.
That's true. That was Andrei. With me, I have Andrei Zaretski, keyboard player extraordinaire of Toronto prog masters Driftglass, and we also have JP Revel, who is the drummer of Piece of Maiden, the premier Canadian Iron Maiden tribute band, and also industry specialist, given that he is a very important person at LiveNation.
Wish. And we also have Belgian Jasper, the famous influencer, YouTuber, marketing director, CEO, president, and best metal interviewer in the world.
You forgot Fluffer.
And the owner of Belgian Jasper YouTube channel. Yeah, honestly, if you guys like interviews of awesome up-and-coming metal bands, just check out his channel. The interviews are always great.
Awesome.
Is this video actually posted on his channel?
Yeah, but the video version of it is. But most people will discover this podcast through Buzzsprout, Spotify, maybe one or two people on Deezer, and then all the other platforms out there. We're basically on every platform that you can imagine.
Are you implying that two people actually use Deezer?
I'm the only one.
Well, JP has 2 accounts, right?
We have 4. We have a family account. We have 4.
There you go. Wow, we might just double our viewers or listeners via these. Awesome. All right, so for episode number 6, what we're going to talk about is a little bit more of a personal conversation. We're going to go back into our own past, and we're going to share how our journey as metalheads began and accelerated and all that kind of good stuff. So we're going to talk about our own road of discovery with metal, shows that were really important to us, albums that really shaped our exploration and all that good stuff. But as always, our throats would get very painful and dry if we talk without lubrication. So we tend to bring some fuel. Andrei, I know that you can't wait to show the camera what you were having, but maybe this time you can actually say out loud the beer that you are drinking.
Sure. I swung by the LCBO a couple of days ago and I picked up a couple of experimental little things. I've been in an IPA kick lately, so this is Clip Dive Session IPA. Can I see the camera? There we go.
Oh.
It's it's a fun one. I Grand River Brewing, so
I have not had that before.
No, it's it's an Ontario beer. It's an Ontario craft beer. It's a hazy IPA. They say session IPA, but it's quite nothing session about it, to be honest with you. It's quite heavy, but I really like it. It's light, it's very citrusy, and I'm not getting paid to say this.
There you go. One happy customer. I need to check that out. I've not had that before. JP, what are you having today?
It's a new edition of Creemore. It's called Kolsch, probably because it's a German style beer. It's a light version of Creemore. I really like Creemore, and which I find it's a good winter beer. So in the summer, it's good to have something a little bit lighter on the palate. So this is a great combination of the Creemore taste and a light summer beer. Today was muggy, like quite hot, but not even enjoyable.
Yeah.
So this is a great beer for hot weather like that. So
perfect. Awesome. And so I brought to this conversation one of the 23 Vox and Hops brutal North America collabs. This one between Henderson Brewing Company in Toronto and Thrashed, the Discord and YouTube channel of our buddy Chris Thrash himself. And this beer it's called Suds for Buds. It's a Grodziski, which I'm probably mispronouncing like crazy. It's Polish style beer. It's a very smooth and light beer, but with a smokiness to it. So imagine a crushable summer beer, but with that smoky, heavy smoky flavor. I like it. I'm surprised how much I like it, because I like smoky beers quite a lot, but for me they're like, I'll have one or two and I'll have it while eating. It's not something that I see myself usually like sit on a patio all day and drink, but this one is pretty smooth, but it's also like, it's pretty lightweight. It's only 3.5% alcohol, so
okay,
basically drinking water. All right, so we're gonna talk a little bit about our own journey discovering metal. So I want to ask you guys to share a little bit today about maybe two things in particular. Like, how did you first discover metal music through actually recorded music? Like, what was that song? What was that video clip? What was that album that really got you hooked? And then I also want to talk about, maybe not necessarily your first show, but like a show that was really important for you growing up. So, maybe let's start quickly with album, song, video clip, that kind of stuff. We talked obviously already many times before at different podcasts about specific albums that were really important to us. So we might hear some names again. JP, you are nodding. Tell Andrei and myself, like, what was that when you were a young kid in France? What was that one album or one band or one song or whatever that really was influential for you as you were getting to know this music?
Yeah, I was nodding because you talked about video clips, and at the time when I was growing up in the early 90s, mid 90s, that was big. So I remember there was this TV show in France every day, 6 p.m. I would come back from finishing my homework. I would sit in front of TV, and it was called Top 50, so Top 50. So basically going through the top selling records of the week. So each day they would go through 10, and that's really how I started to, listen to music. And so that's why I was nodding, because clearly that's how I started seeing some heavier bands. I guess it's there's multiple steps. It's like a step by step, but I don't want to take too long, whatever, but I'd say really the first one was 1991. I was 11, born in 1980. So 1991, Wind of Change. I know it's not heavy metal, but if you go back and watch the video clip, you see the band wearing leather, their flying V guitars, the big drums, the crowd, Klaus with his
and I'm just gonna pause you for once. I'm gonna pause you for 1 second, JP, because although we kind of expect that people know what you're talking about, but you're talking about the Scorpions.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Wind of Change for me, it's such a classic that you're 100% correct. Scorpions, 1991 album, Crazy World. And so I remember watching that show and came up, and I fell in love with the song. I loved it, and there's also all the, as I said, the images of the video clip with the guitars. And my parents bought me the cassette of the album Crazy World. That was the first, and also the thing is, like, as soft as the song Wind of Change is, in the album itself, you have some pretty heavy riffs.
Oh, for sure.
Pretty cool, like Tease Me, Please Me. There's the Hit Between the Eyes, Crazy World. There's lots of. I love the album. I still love it today. So I'd say like the first introduction was really that. We can talk later about how I got into heavier stuff, but really that was the defining moment, I would say.
It's interesting that so my parents also have the Crazy World. Like, they have it on CD. Like, it's one of those early CDs in their collection, right? When CDs became a thing. And I joked later in life with my parents that, like, you guys had heavy metal albums before I got into metal, because millions of people around the world bought that album because of that one, song, ballad, right? And for those that don't know, the song is pretty interesting because it sounds on the surface like a cheesy ballad, but it is about the reunification of Germany, about the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Very powerful music video.
It's powerful. It was a very relevant song at the time. It's a massive hit. But so many people will know that song, know it's the Scorpions, but have no clue that the Scorpions is actually quite a heavy band, at least at the time. Yeah. It's like like a Mr. Big with like To Be With You, and like an Extreme with More Than Words. If you would tell people that those are two metal bands, they would like, what are you talking about? But pretty cool. Awesome. On my end also, I don't know, JP and Andrei, if you had similar things, but when I was like that age, 10, 11 years old, and a lot of kids in class would start to listen to like the very like poppy, and in Europe at the time, house music was becoming a thing in the early 90s. I was always just listening to my parents' record collection, and I was listening to like Dire Straits and Queen and Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, and stuff like that. Is that something that you guys had as well, where it was your parents' music choice that, even if they weren't really metalheads, that somewhat guided you?
Not really for me, no. My parents never listened to that, just because growing up behind the Iron Curtain, it was a different experience, right? Like rock music wasn't really a thing. Mm-hmm. Like there was a bunch of underground bands, and there was a very popular underground, almost like I don't know, like a Nirvana-ish, if you want to talk about lyrical content, but just a very influential rock band in the 80s and 90s that my older brother was into. That it's called Kino, which is huge. Their main kind of songwriter died, I think, in 91. He died in a car accident, and there's still a wall where his car crashed, where people write in graffiti that he's alive. It's really interesting, like almost like a living monument. But my brother was listening to that a little bit, but given that I kind of grew up here, I wasn't really into the Russian stuff as much, so it was a little bit different. So just for the listeners who don't know Andrei that well, who are new to the podcast, or maybe just real quick, we're all first generation immigrants to Canada. JP coming from France some time ago, Andrei originally from Russia, and myself from Belgium.
Yeah, for me it was the same. Like, my mom was listening to a lot of music, but she had records. It was classic. And actually, my mom's favorite artist of all time is Belgian. It was Jacques Brel. Yeah. She had tons of records of Jacques Brel, so I grew up listening to a lot of francophone music like that. So really immersed in listening to music, but not that style. So really it came through TV, as I said, and later through friends for heavier stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Funny enough, one of my parents' favorite artists is French. They really love Joe Dassin. So. Joe Dassin, yeah.
Oh, Champs-Élysées.
Champs-Élysées.
Hey, you know what?
What a metal podcast,
dude! If I want to get in like a really good mood on like a Saturday morning, I put on Ocean.
Oh, we saw the video.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You posted it.
I was whistling. Yeah, doing the dishes. Awesome. So hey, Andrei. So you're saying that you had definitely some influence of popular rock bands in Russia, but do I understand that you got introduced or discovered metal more once you had moved to Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. I had I came to Canada at a young age. I came in 1993, so I was 9 at the time. And I wasn't really listening to any kind of music. Like I'm a classically trained pianist, so other than classical music, I didn't really have any exposure to anything else. But I think it was at the time I really liked the imagery of just heavier music. So I started listening to. I got myself a tiny little stereo. It was literally this big, like 6-7 inches, like tiny little thing. I think I got it for like $2, and I was like in my early teens, and I would listen every day at 10 o'clock. It was actually on Q107, which is a popular Toronto classic rock station now, but at the time it wasn't really as classic rock. Then they had the top 10 at 10. So I started listening to that because I really wanted to get those rock in it. And some of the songs, the heavier songs, really resonated with me. The one that caught my attention, I still remember, was it's a little bit silly to say now. It was actually Rob Zombie Dragula.
Oh, nice!
It was very catchy. You know what I'm talking about, right? It was very catchy.
I am the one.
It was like, oh wow, that's really cool. And then it was quite fortunate that right after the top 10 and 10, they were doing mandatory Metallica. So that was my that just kind of sealed the deal.
Nice. Well, so talk about Metallica. For me, like, although, yeah, like, you know, when I was a kid, I was really into oldies, like listening to 60s music, like the Beach Boys were always big for me. And then I discovered Queen at a very young age, and I was big Queen fan. And so when all, like, you know, the kids in school were listening to like the pop songs, whatever were the hits, you know, and Eurobeat and all that kind of stuff, I was still very much more listening to, yeah, exactly. Very much listening to like the older classic rock stuff and oldies, and then that kind of, you know, drove me towards like, yeah, some rockier songs, not even too crazy stuff, you know. Like, I mean, I remember when, like, was it 1994, I guess 1995, when you had like the Connells and like whatever that band was with like Breakfast at Tiffany's, you know, like it was just like pop rock songs, but that just kind of resonated a little bit more with me. And then, like anybody else with Metallica, you know, the Black Album was huge. We didn't have it at home when I was that young, but you know, they played Nothing Else Matters on the radio and stuff like that, and so I knew and Enter Sandman once in a while, even on like the more popular radio stations. So I knew the radio songs that Metallica done. But then, like, and I think, oh, when was this? This was like mid 90s. One Easter vacation, my mom took me and my dad, not me and my dad, me and my brother. My dad had to work, but my mom took me and my brother, my older brother, to Barcelona for like a weekend, you know, like a 3-day vacation. And this is like the moment for me. It's like, just like, you know, it's I will never forget. We went for like lunch at like the Hard Rock Cafe in Barcelona, which as like a young teenager was like so cool. Hard Rock, like in Europe, it was like still a cool thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's different in the States, but like it was a special thing in Europe. And we go, and I remember that my brother and I, we had learned to love chili con carne before, and so they had that on the menu, obviously. So in Barcelona, so we're like, yeah, we'll have that. And the waitress was like, okay, do you want it spicy? Do you want it not spicy? And we're like, not spicy, please. And they clearly messed up our order. I remember it was like super spicy, and like, you know, I still have like nightmares of like that burnt. Now I love spicy food, but as a kid it was different. But I remember from what even was more, like what I remember more from that lunch than the spiciness of that food was on all the screens in the Hard Rock Cafe was a live concert of Metallica, and it was like mid 90s Metallica, like, you know, short hair and makeup and whatever. But they were playing Master of Puppets, and I'd never heard that before, right? I just was introduced to, like, at that time, I'm sure maybe the Load album had come out recently or whatever. It must have been mid 90s. And I saw like Master of Puppets live for like, that was the first time I saw it, and it was such, and the intensity, the power, you know, and like the pyros and whatever. And it was like, I wanted that. I wanted more of that. And so I remember going home, like the next day, I would like get on my bike and would bike to, like, you know, the record store, and I bought every Metallica album that they had. So I bought Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master, like all, right? And whatever they had, I just bought them all. And that's how it started for me. You know, like that's when I discovered, you know, Creeping Death and For Whom the Bell Tolls, which I still think is the greatest Metallica song. But yeah, that was for me the moment, like having two ridiculously hot chili con carne in Barcelona in the Hard Rock Cafe watching.
Yeah, you went straight into thrash metal. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, here's the thing though. Almost everybody my age that I know, when they started with like heavier music, it was either with hardcore music, like heavy punk, or thrash metal. Very few people got straight into like symphonic metal or power metal or whatever. I feel like a lot of people started with thrash and then evolved to something different. Maybe that's because the big four became so big, and like if you look up heavy metal bands, you're gonna find Slayer, Megadeth, Metallica, and Anthrax.
No, it's because I was gonna say when I was 14. So after I got introduced to AC/DC and Rage Against the Machine that came out in '92 and all that, a friend of mine that I met in the end of junior high said, "My brother, he loves that heavy band. You might like them. They're called Slayer." I was like, never heard of them. And he gave me the Decade of Aggression. So it was a CD that he stole from his brother and gave it to me, and I put it on. And I loved Hell Awaits. Like the introduction with like all the slow parts. I just thought it was the best thing ever. But then as soon as they went fast, I couldn't take it. Like it was too fast, too much. Yeah. So it's funny that you love the thrash and Master of Puppets and Kill 'Em All and all that first, because for me, thrash was too much. It took me a couple of years after to go back and.
It's a very similar experience, and it's funny because I'm a backwards Metallica fan. I did hear a couple of things on the radio, but it was like Better Than You, Turn the Page, Whiskey in the Jar, that kind of stuff, which I liked. I thought it was pretty cool, but I wanted something different. And then when they released S&M, I was just starting to get into music, and I was starting to have my first job, getting a little bit of income, and I thought it was really cool. So my friend and I bought S&M. I think it was like $60, and for a couple of 15, 16-year-old kids in the late 90s, $60 was a lot. They're greedy bastards, so whatever. Pre-Napster, of course. And we just ran home. Like we split the discs up, disc 1, disc 2, and just played the absolute shit out of it. And following that, once Napster became big and everything, my friend gave me the original, the 80s stuff. And I was completely blown away. Like, what the fuck? This is not the same kind of music. What's going on? And at the same time, he also gave me Rust in Peace and Seasons in the Abyss. It's like, check this shit.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you went straight to it. Yeah, it came much later for me.
Yeah, much like you, JP, I put on, I loved Rust in Peace straight off the bat. But once I put Seasons in the Abyss on, I was just like, whoa. Like,
which is interesting.
What is this? Is this death metal? Is this like?
Awesome. Now, hey, here's the thing, though. I know all three of us are big Iron Maiden fans. So, JP, when did you discover Iron Maiden first?
First Iron Maiden. So I was 20. So pretty much late, because before that, so I started listening to after my first attempt at Slayer. One night I saw, it was 96, I was watching TV late at night, and the video clip of Roots, Bloody Roots came on, and that blew me away. So that's how I got into, I was like, this is so good, so I have to go into it. So I went into Sepultura, and I went back, Arise, Chaos, AD, all the old stuff, and then Slayer. So I was really into thrash metal. And then, when I was 20, still good friend with him, a buddy of mine, Guillaume, met in business school, and it's funny, it's a crazy story. We're just getting ready to play soccer, getting dressed. We didn't know each other, and I was talking to a friend of mine. I said there was Sepultura, and he heard me, so he come talk to me, and he said, do you know Iron Maiden? And for me, Iron Maiden was just Fear of the Dark. That's the only thing I heard about Iron Maiden, and I thought, and I still think it's a pretty weak song, except for in a live show after 3 beers, it's awesome. But first, when you hear it, it's like,
on record, it's not great.
Thrash, and when you're used to thrash metal, you think Fear of the Dark is pretty weak anyway. So I was like, Iron Maiden, whatever. And he said, hey, listen, I'll bring you the Live After Death tomorrow. I'll give it to you. He said, listen to it. He said, I'm pretty sure it's going to change your life forever. And that's exactly what happened. He the next day he gave me the CD. I put it on, and that was the greatest thing I ever. So It was late.
Not the day that you married your wife, not the day that your daughters were born, but when you got Live After Death. That was the best.
Yeah, exactly. And I was late. Like a lot of people say, oh, I got into Maiden when I was 15, 16. No, for me, I was 20. And I'll say it. That was late. Yeah. It was late and whatever. But yeah, it gave me Live After Death. I thought the production was amazing. I was like, who the fuck plays the bass? Like, how does he do that? Like, does he have a bass? The gallops, the trooper, Aces High, Revelations, the bass line, Power Slave, blown away. So yeah, Live After Death, 2000, I was 20, and it changed my life. Yeah, absolutely.
Andrei, how did you discover Maiden?
So with Iron Maiden, I tried getting into Iron Maiden, I think it was like early 2000s, and it wasn't really doing it for me. I think I heard like Run to the Hills and like Wasted Years, some of the more kind of poppy stuff, and you know, it compared to Master of Puppets, I couldn't appreciate the melodies at the time. And then just somehow, this was in the internet download era, and I was just craving new music like crazy, just getting whatever I could, just, you know, trading albums and everything. And X Factor landed in my my computer, which I know doesn't have the same kind of reputation, but I mean, for
those two Deezer listeners, they were like, no, fuck it, we're out of here.
This was, I think, like 2000 or 2001, something like that. So I got it, and at the time the lyrics really connected with me. You got to keep in mind, you know, age as well. But I thought it was incredible, and I was like, wow, like this is why they're so big, because, you know, unlike Metallica, they write these really thought-provoking lyrics and all of that. And I did appreciate the melodies a bit. And I listened to that thing like on repeat over and over and over again. At the same time, I was also given Brave New World, which is still one of my favorite Maiden albums of all time. And that was, well, I didn't appreciate the lyrics as much as I do now, because I wanted something at the time a little bit more, a little bit more world issues oriented. Just the instrumentals and everything, and the vocal performance was incredible. And then after that, I discovered Rock in Rio. I saw that video, and it was just like,
that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, cause like the idea that you, like, I think you are one of the few people that I know that discovered Iron Maiden and fell in love with Iron Maiden through the X Factor. And all three of us agree that that is a hugely underrated album. But nevertheless, you know, in the grand scheme of things, the Blaze Bayley era is like, nobody's gonna say that that's the greatest era of the band. I'm almost jealous of going through your experience where you fall in love with this band with X Factor, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. And then only after that you discover Hallowed Be Thy Name, you know, Number of the Beast, Rhyme the Beast. Like, that must be like, you know, it is crazy. It's like going to your favorite restaurant, realizing there's a second menu you never looked at, trying something and realizing that, man, this is even so much better. Like, that's crazy.
So I was, this was 2002. Right. It was in the summer, and I went to Russia with my parents just to, you know, visit family, do all this other stuff. And again, like, this is the age of down of, you know, what's called dial-up, and also like, music wasn't as readily available at the time. So I bought a couple of bootleg CDs of Iron Maiden, and it was like, one was the Iron Maiden and Killers on like a double disc back to back, which I thought was the real thing, but fuck, what do I know? And then the other one was a combination. It was one disc, and it had all of Live After Death and the Number of the Beast, and that fucking changed my life. Like, holy shit!
Yeah.
Like, what? How? Just no words. Like, how the fuck? I just couldn't imagine. But I have to say that, and nothing is the quality of that disc, but just last year I acquired an original vinyl of Live After Death, and it just sounds so much better. I have a newfound appreciation. I know JP and I were always arguing over the quality of the recording and the production and that. But after listening to that on my rather mediocre vinyl setup, holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, wow. Andrei, like, are you expecting us to be surprised that the official 180-gram vinyl release of Life After Death is better than a knockoff from a Russian metro station you bought somewhere?
I don't think it was even 180 gram. Like, it was, someone gave it to me at the Rasta Boss show that we went, which was the last big show we went to.
I remember.
I like live concerts. Here, you take it. I'm like,
that's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Incredible sound.
So I'll tell you, Andrei, that and I'll bring it back next time I go to Belgium, but back home in Belgium, because I went through this ridiculous collector's period when I was in university. I was just like on eBay every day, just like looking for Iron Maiden stuff. I have like the whole Iron Maiden Russia illegal collection. And so it's exactly like you say, it's like one disc has 2 albums on it, and like the artwork is the 2 albums combined and shit like that. So I have all of that. But
I bought it in like a subway station.
Cool
like, it was just...
So actually, you know, for me, Iron Maiden. So I was already into metal from the mid 90s. Like I said, you know, discovering Metallica, and it kind of opened, like the 80s Metallica, and it kind of opened the door for me for a lot of stuff. And then I got really into hardcore in the second half of the 90s. And like all like the friends that I had at the time that were like in bands, it was all hardcore, you know. So I was listening to a lot of punk music. I was also getting really into like oi or street punk music.
We forgive you.
Yeah, like, I mean, I know it's like skinhead music, but I was not really, you know, into that kind of stuff. But so I was very much into hardcore, and like hardcore was kind of like a mix of thrash metal and punk anyway. So it was all in that sphere. And I would go to record stores a lot, and I would just buy albums. But I would still kind of like, you know, stay with the bands that were quote unquote relevant at that time, and that would once in a while be on radio or what have you. And so I knew Iron Maiden from seeing the albums in the album store, and it was always like with like this, you know, zombie monster on the cover. And I never kind of like, for me, I kind of like it, I looped it together with like, you know, Cannibal Corpse, you know, like, you know, a cartoonesque covers, and it must be something pretty wild and extreme, you know. And I never really gave them, and also like, and let's be honest, in the late 90s, like nobody really cared about Maiden, like except like the people I went to shows with Blaze era, except for Andrei, were people that loved them in the 80s or whatever. Like if you were like growing up as a teenager, you knew Machine Head, you knew Sepultura, you knew Metallica, but you didn't really know Iron Maiden. And so I always kind of like, you know, didn't care too much about it. And then there was on Belgian TV, like it was like our MTV. I don't know if it was MTV in Belgium or if it was like the Belgian whatever. They had this show, and it was like, because in Belgium metal is definitely not popular, it's very underground. There was this one hard rock / heavy metal show on TV. It was called Wet and Wild, and that's so bad. And it was like, you know, at like 12:30 to 1:30 at night, you know, like, and so once in a while I kind of stayed up to watch it. And in 1999, first video that comes on is The Wicker Man by Iron Maiden. You know, first single for Brave New World. And that video, when I heard it for the first time, I was like, I was sold. Like I saw that video, and within the 3 minutes and 22 seconds or whatever that song lasts for, I had made up my mind that Iron Maiden was the greatest band of all time. And that was going to be my favorite band from now on. And so I kind of went somewhat through a similar evolution that Andrei went, because like a couple of weeks later, we have like a class trip, like school trip to London for the day. Like if you're in Belgium, you can just drive to like, you know, you can get to London in like a few hours and come back. So we just had an afternoon in London, and we had like an hour of free time. And I went to like the HMV in Piccadilly Circus, and I went to the metal section. And I picked up a few things. I picked up also like the greatest hits of Diamond Head and stuff like that. Look at a few great albums. But one of the things that I picked up was the brand new single, The Wicker Man, and it came out in 3 versions. So I had like a picture disc single that I picked up. I loved it. That was my first Maiden record that I got. And then a few weeks later, I guess, Brave New World comes out, and I buy it, together with the Ed Hunter video game / greatest hits album, which was a really good greatest hits album, and I just played that over and over. But also, I played that game over and over. I don't know anybody that have played Ed Hunter the game, but I played that so many times, and you could pick the songs. So every level, you could pick one song. What?
Were the songs not instrumental?
No. You could you could. So it was like you basically said like, okay, now I have to play this level, and I'm gonna choose this song of the greatest hits listed. It was a crappy game, but it was like, anyway, I don't want to go into the game too much, but that was my introduction to Iron Maiden. So I got Brave New World and the greatest hits, and because I was playing these both equally over and over again, I have so much affinity for the songs of Brave New World. Like a mediocre Brave New World song for me is as amazing as, Aces High, right? Because I was just playing it over and over again. And then obviously, well, I started buying every magazine about Iron Maiden at that point. Like I was just instantly sold. And then right after, just like Andrei, Rock in Rio came out, and I was like, what? That was so good. It was the first Dolby 5.1 surround concert video ever created. I must have played that a million times. I would wake up in the morning on a Sunday and I would blast it throughout the house. My dad liked the Klansman song and Fear of the Dark, so I was blasting that through the house.
Great song. Great.
Yeah, like it was so amazing, and ever since. And then I luckily got to see them pretty quickly after, and that was it. And then now I think I've seen them like over 20 times now. It's been quite the ride. Oh man.
I have a funny story, just quickly. It's a small, short story. So I discovered Iron Maiden, as I said, getting obsessed with them. And in university, I was involved with a music festival at the school. And it was a festival, there was legit artists like pros and all that. And one of there were like 3 or 4 nights that were at a venue in Lille, so very close to Belgium, north of France, and the venue was like the opera house, same size, same setup, and we had some shows there. But basically, I would spend like 3-4 days there, organizing, setting up everything, and anyway, and one of the guy. One day, the owner actually of the place was a big metal head. He had like always like T-shirts of different metal bands and all that. Then we started talking about metal, and I said, hey, I just discovered that amazing band, I'm obsessed with it, and it's Iron Maiden. And he said, okay, come follow me. So he come to my desk, so I go upstairs into his office and all that, and he pulls that big photo album, and he said, Maiden, when they got back together, their reunion tour, and so when Bruce came back and all of that, he said, before they went back on the tour, you know where they rehearsed? I was like, no. And he opened the thing. Is that they rented Le Splendide, that was the name of the venue, for a month.
Wow.
I was there because Lille is like an hour train ride to London. So he said they didn't want to do it in England because they didn't want to be bothered by the fans and all the paparazzis following them around. So they rented that small venue in Lille, and he opened that photo album. And it was Maiden hanging out with him and at the venue, all that, just rehearsing for a full month. They rented the venue and just played, and I was like,
incredible.
Anyway, but
that's
yeah,
awesome.
That was the guy said, yeah, and they said the whole band was there and the management was there for the whole month. It's crazy. I'm so jealous.
So why have you never told us that story, GP? Were you just waiting for us to do a podcast about Iron Maiden?
I don't know. It just came back to me. But I was thinking about the history. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, for the listeners, JP and I think we first truly bonded when we went plane spotting when Ed Force was landing in Pearson Airport here in Toronto.
April 2016.
There you go. Boom. Well, so hey, talking about Maiden playing in Canada, and given the fact that all 3 of us are first generation migrants into Canada. We came to Canada at different stages of our life. I am here for almost 9 years. JP, you've been here for what? 15? 20?
17.
13. 17.
17, yeah.
Wow. And then Andrei has been here for, a long time. Because
I can't do math since '93.
Boom. So we'll have different.
6?
No.
Yeah. So we've had different experiences, obviously, and our musical journey will have been different in Canada. But I know we Andrei already shared that his first real metal experiences were in Canada because that's just when he was already here. But JP, for you, that was different because you discovered this music in France, and then you came over. Obviously, all three of us know that the European metal scene versus the Canadian metal scene is quite different. But do you remember your first metal experience here? And I'm also asking because hey, this week is Canada Day, so let's reflect and also celebrate some of our experiences here. Do you remember your first Canadian metal experience? What was that?
With a Canadian band or just a venue /show /
I just after you moved, what was the first metal experience that really you will never forget?
I moved. Yeah, that's a good topic. I went to now I'm in Toronto / Richmond Hill, but in the GTA. But when I first moved to Canada, I was in Montreal for the first 4.5 years. And I don't know if you moved to Montreal, but there's if you've been to Montreal before, but there's St. Catherine Street, and there's that metal bar that's called Les Foufounes Électriques. So for me, that was my first experience. I moved to Montreal in the spring of 2004. So spring means people are tired of the snow, tired of the cold, the weather is getting nicer, and everybody's down the street walking, enjoying the patios and all that. And we had a nice spring that year. And so, yeah, it was for me, my first metal experience was really walking down St. Catherine on the east side of things and really seeing that. For me, it looked like Eddie at Dunnington. You remember Eddie at Dunnington above the stage? So when I saw the bar, I was like, that's Eddie, that's Dunnington, that's Maiden. So I went and had a beer there and listened to some metal. And yeah, the first metal experience in Canada was that. I was like, that's so cool. So yeah, because I'm from the countryside in France, and I lived in Paris for 1.5 years. But yeah, people don't wear metal t-shirts in Paris or just go to a bar, go out with and here, I come to a new town, new city, new continent, new country, new everything. And then I walk down the streets and in that area of town, people are just wearing metal t-shirts and Metallica t-shirts and Maiden t-shirts. This is awesome. I love it. So yeah, it's first Canadian metal experience.
Awesome. Andrei, what was the first show that you went to as a kid in Canada?
So before going into that, it's funny because despite growing up here, my first actual metal concert was in Russia.
Of course.
It was 2002 when I told you guys where I got the metal stuff and everything. I was there, and just before that, I got into Aria, which is a Russian Iron Maiden sort of band that.
Sort of, just
gave it to me.
somewhat similar to Iron Maiden.
It's like a Maiden / Priest hybrid almost. Later becoming something a little bit different, but yeah. So I had no idea because this was, I didn't expect to see a show there, but we were walking around and I saw a poster and it was the last show, it was called Judgment Day. The original singer was leaving. It was a very Bruce Dickinson-ish Donington sort of moment. And I was it was at the soccer stadium. I'm I have to go. So I asked my parents to hook me up. But, and great experience. But when I came back, the first metal show I went to was at the Cathedral. So I don't know if you guys know the Cathedral.
No.
No, you haven't. Okay, so the Cathedral is an institution. It really is. It's one of 3 venues called the Big Bop, right at the intersection of Queen and Bathurst in downtown Toronto, which was
it still there?
Mecca. No,
okay.
It was the Mecca for heavy metal and just punk rock, dark rays, and that kind of like alternative culture. It was right now it's a furniture store. I think it's called like CB2 or CB4 or something like that.
Like it's close to where like Velvet Underground is and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes. It's right at the intersection. If you guys Google the Big Bop, you'll see it. It was a 3-decker live music venue. So the Cathedral was a very gothic looking, very grungy looking space. And I went there to see. It was like a battle of the bands, local bands. It was called the Metal Fest. And that was my first kind of experience going to an actual show in Canada. It was all local bands. I did actually see a band from Windsor there called Betrayer, which blew me away. I started following them and later became friends with them. Like playing together, it was a great experience. But it's something that really ingrained me into the whole kind of Canadian metal culture. You guys would know the Rock Pile in Etobicoke, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same owner. They moved from the Cathedral to the Rock Pile. So
okay.
It became something more like a West End sort of thing. But back in the early 2000s, Queen West was like heavy metal. The Queen and Bathurst was heavy metal central, and it was crazy. But the first major show was Summer Sanitarium, 2003. Jasper,
nice.
You're laughing.
Well, I mean, I know what band you're talking about, obviously.
that's Metallica, with some very. That was right after the release of Saint Anger, so some very interesting support bands, which included Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, Deftones, and Mudvayne.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, that was like, I mean, I would have killed to go to that show at that time, man. Like,
it was an incredible show because friends of mine got. We were actually in the pit. Like it was at Sky Dome or Rogers Center, whatever that was called now.
Right. Yeah.
And it was completely sold out. And we were right in the pit. My good friend at the time got us tickets. He had a broken leg, and I still remember. We're getting wristbands to go in, and they're like, the disclaimer, you may get hurt, you may get pushed, whatever that. And he's on his sweatshirt. He said, "I don't give a fuck. Fuck yeah!"
Well, it's also like that. In the bigger picture, Saint Anger definitely was the catalyst that kind of made Metallica truly reinvent themselves, because it was on that tour that they played like 5-6 Kill 'Em All songs, right? They started playing old school thrash songs again. They kind of, forgot about their 90s periods, and so yeah, cool stuff.
They played 2 songs off of Saint Anger in that tour. They added some solos to them, so
yeah, for sure.
We were very happy. It was an incredible experience.
Oh, I bet. You know what? Hey, I still think it's an underrated album looking back. I mean, yeah, sure. I would love it if there was like a different production version of that album, but there's some interesting things on that album. But anyway, so I actually quickly looked it up as you were talking. So the Big Bop and the Cathedral that disappeared in 2010. So that is 2 years before I moved to Toronto, because I came over in 2012, in September 2012, and my brother gave me like a going away gift in Belgium, and it was actually like a ticket to go see Anthrax, Testament, and Death Angel in the Danforth Music Hall, like a week after I came to Toronto. I was like,
oh, that's cool.
Maybe not even a week. Like it was
at that show.
Really? Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And it was so I got there, and I was surprised to see that, like, I remember like the ticket was like, maybe it's like doors open at 7 or something like that, and I get there like at And like in Belgium, if like something says doors open at 7, that means the first band is on at 9, you know? So I get there at like 7:30, and like as I, you know, there's a line, I go in line and I get in, and I walk in and it's like the last song of Death Angel. And I'm like, fuck, like, because I love Death Angel, and it was right after they released, well, no, it wasn't right after release a specific album, but I've been a fan of, like, I love the old Death Angel stuff, but it's one of those thrash bands that in the early 2000s, or in the 2000s, I should just say, have gone to such a new height in their career, you know, like so many other ones, Overkill, Testament, Creator. So I was really excited to go watch them. I'd seen them many times before, but still, they were like, I was almost more excited about Death Angel and Testament and Anthrax, but anyway. And so I'm just a brand new kid, right? I drove there with my rental car that I got the day before, and got pictures with as they went to their tour bus with this was it Mark Ostegueda, or I always mispronounce the last name, but the singer of Death Angel, and it was a great show. And I just, you know, being by myself, right? And also like this new kid, I remember being like in the mosh pit, like getting ready between Testament and Anthrax, and I'm just standing with some guys, and I'm wearing my metal vest, you know, this one right here, kind of looked similar at that time because it's my old vest, and people go like, oh man, hey, sick vest. I'm like, yeah, thanks man. Like, hey, what's your name? Oh, I'm Jasper. Oh, you have an accent. Where are you from? Oh, I just moved like 3 days ago. You know, like, well, that's awesome, whatever. And so there were this group of guys, and they were older than me, but they were like, oh yeah, so they kind of like, you know, embraced me, if you will. I don't remember their names or never met them, never saw them again after that show, but like, you know, we kind of hung out. And
it was Andrei.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Andrei. And then but it was like this, it turned out to be this crazy night, because so like Anthrax played the show. It was a great show, but it was like I think it was the first tour that they had Joey Belladonna back. I could be wrong, but anyway, I was
first tour, no.
It was a decent show, and had a lot of fun. So kind of like hung out with these guys, and there's an Irish bar not too far away from well, not maybe an Irish bar, but a little bit more west of the Danforth Music Hall, also on the south side of Danforth. So we go to the bar there, and we're just having, and then one of these guys is like his wife is apparently in labor, and like he gets the phone call at like, you know, 1:30, and he's like, fuck, we have to go, whatever, and so rushes, and like people are asking me like, why do you come here? Like I was like, I'm over work and blah blah blah, and they're like, oh yeah, man, you like, do you know anything about Canada? It's like, no, I just literally like came here 2 days ago, and they're like, oh man, yeah, you need to eat poutine. And I was like, all right, whatever. And so these guys go like, okay, we have to go downtown to get poutine from Poutini's or whatever, and I go like, oh yeah, no problem. Like my car is parked like, you know, a few streets away. It's like a tiny car. I mean, like 6 of us. Like, yeah, just get in. I was unaware of the stigma against, and the very rightful stigma against drinking and driving in Canada. But like in Belgium, like, you know, you go to a show, you have 6 beers, and you drive home. Nobody gives a shit. And here was like very different. Everybody's like, oh man, you're gonna drive? Are you sure? Because we'd been like, you know, slamming a few beers. But anyway, so yeah, we get all in the car, drive to like, I don't know, like King West area, park in the street at a Poutine's. By this time it's 2:30 and all the clubs are done. So people pour out into the street, and the lines at like the pizza places and the poutine places get super long. Anyway, so we get in line in one of these Poutine's places, and or not Poutine, like, was it Smokes? Poutines, like
scenery, yeah.
Anyway, so we're just waiting in line, and takes super long fucking time to get there, and or get our order in. I hated poutine, by the way. I still do. I just can't. I mean, I like fries, I like cheese, and I like meat, but gravy, cheese curds, and fries all together, like, why? I don't know. But anyway, so we're trying, and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And we're standing on the street, and there's no cars parked in the street, and this is like at whatever, but my car is, and all of a sudden there's like a towing truck that drives past, and stops and starts to, reverse.
So you're
And we're like, oh, hello, what's this towing car doing here? Oh, he must be going back to that car. It's like, oh shit, that's my car. And and this street, so for those people that are listening, in the summer or September in this case, when it's 2:30 on a Saturday night, all the bars have to close and all the pubs close and all the clubs close. So there's a ton of people on the street on a nice night out, right? So there's a lot of people on the street, and I throw down my poutine, I run to my car, and people are starting to like cheer in the streets. I get into the car, put my key in, start the engine, and I rev the motor, and I turn out of the parking spot 1 second before the towing truck. He sees me running, so he's accelerating, trying to block me in, right, so that he can take my car away. And I drive away. Everybody in the street is cheering, yeah. Drove around the block a few times, found another parking spot, parked the car back, went back to the poutine's place. But by that time, the guys were gone, and my poutine was still on the floor. But anyway, that was my first attempt to eating poutine. That was my first metal show in Canada, and yeah, that was quite the experience. That was my introduction to.
That's a hell of a story. I heard that. I remember you telling me that story before, but it is definitely,
yeah, it's very metal.
Yeah, exactly. But it was pretty cool. Awesome. Final feat that I need to just share. The first time that I went to see JP's band play, who is an Iron Maiden cover band, to make the circle round back to Iron Maiden, I took an Uber or a taxi or whatever to his show, and the bill for that ride, took a photo of it. It was $6.66.
I remember that picture. Yeah, it was awesome. Loved it.
All right, awesome. Well, hey, it's great that we got to know a little bit more about each of ours journey towards heavy metal. I want to thank you guys for being open and sharing a little bit more. JP, I still can't believe that you hung out in Iron Maiden's rehearsal room and never told us about that. But
really forgot.
I'm glad that we found out. Awesome. Well, hey guys, this was fun. This was different.
Yeah,
it's good.
We'll wrap it up here, and I want to thank everybody who's listening, obviously, for all the support, for checking out our podcast, for watching the videos on the Belgian Jasper YouTube channel, or just listening on Deezer, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all these platforms that you can find us. And we'll be back next month with episode number 7. Oh, and before I forget, if you go to the Belgian Jasper Instagram page or YouTube or whatever, you will actually see that there's some 3 Amigos patches as well, that if you are super interested in, you want to support us and put a patch on your vest, you can always reach out to us via DM and we'll hook you up. Awesome. JP, Andrei, thank you so much for your time tonight.
guys.
Hey, Jennifer. Thanks, guys. Awesome.